It's Shannon.
Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon Live.
It's Shannon.
Because you don't know how it's going to turn out.
It's Shannon. It's Shannon.
My kids empowered me to get out.
What's going on with this remote learning and in the midst of COVID?
Working for different elected officials, learning and understanding how to put the community first.
Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to say hello to my co-host, Dr. Vanessa Danzine, and my co-host, Mr. Sandler Francis. How are you, Dr. Vanessa? And Mr. Sandler, how you doing?
Excellent. Today's a great day.
Oh, but listen, we have a good topic to talk about tonight with a very special guest, and this is a topic that most parents need to listen to and follow what information that they can get and what they need to get, because some of us have kids that have special needs, and sometimes we don't do what we're supposed to do to help our children. But our guest tonight is going to help us out with that and give us the information. And Dr. Vanessa.
Absolutely. Our special guest tonight is Miss Deon Jones. She is a founder of Uniquely Me Creative Arts, and their mission is twofold. It empowers children with special needs to engage in sensory-focused creative art activities that aid in managing sensory processing disorder, build upon their self-confidence, and foster a sense of community, while simultaneously offering families invaluable discussions and resources from therapists, psychologists, social workers, attorneys, and other professionals in the special needs field. Her organization is inspired by her son Elijah, who was born with Down syndrome and later diagnosed with autism. Let's welcome our special guest tonight to the show, Ms. Deon Jones.
Well, hello there, Miss Deon Jones. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, because this is a very, very important topic. And some of us got, children in our families that do have special needs. But the problem is that sometimes the parent don't want to accept that something is wrong with the child, and they don't get the help that they need because they, accustomed to this stigma. They think somebody is going to talk bad about the kid or whatever. And we need to get away from that. But before we get too deeply in it, I know the organization was started because of your son, Elijah. So could you tell us quickly about that?
Sure. So Elijah is 16 years old. He was born with Down syndrome and later diagnosed with autism. So with his diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism, it causes him to have sensory processing disorder, where, he will receive messages inappropriately to his brain, and it will cause him to have adverse reactions, such as like behavioral challenges, outbursts, even causing him to use the bathroom later on in life. About 14 years old, he was potty trained. So with all of, the sensory processing disorder, those challenges, I realized that he really thrives when he's listening to music, when he's engaging in tactile, which is the touch activities. And so I said, what greater way to support the special needs community than having a sensory focused creative art program, and while simultaneously having a parent support group while their children are engaging in the sensory focused creative arts. I will work with parents, with experts in the field. For instance, this Saturday, I have occupational therapist Jenny Clavin coming in to speak with parents about sensory processing disorder and to give them, some information and resources on how to really help their children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you have the question? Okay, I want to ask the other question that, like I said, is very, very important. What would you say to parents, when children are born and you may not notice it right away, but you kind of start noticing something is not right. They're not responding like they should be responding. Maybe their vocabulary is not to where it needs to be, or maybe they're not on the level that you think they should be on. How would you say that, parents should respond to this? Because like I say, a lot of times they just ignore it.
So I don't know if they really just ignore it. Sometimes, unfortunately, like I was a single mom, 22 years old, and I really didn't know how to get the resources, right? So I had to, I went to my pediatrician first. Well, Elijah was already born with the diagnosis, but how I began to receive services was one through the hospital, with a social worker. But for those parents who have children and they may, develop at a later stage, you have to watch out for those developmental delays and go to your pediatrician. Your pediatrician will then recommend, and they have to actually write off for an evaluation. So once your pediatrician says, yes, this child does require an evaluation, you can go and say, through your insurance company, or if you need support with the government, you can go through Medicaid, and I need my child to be evaluated. Luckily, in New York City, we have a plethora of resources and opportunities to have your child evaluated, right? So you have early intervention. Your child can receive services such as speech therapy, occupational therapy at an early age, starting at 3 months, right? But again, you have to go through your pediatrician, you get the necessary documentation, and then you begin the evaluation process. And one of the biggest avenues to receive resources is through the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. It's called OPWDD in New York State. And once you call them and you let them know that you need services, they will automatically, come out and support you. And of course, do their evaluations as well. So if you're living in New York State, please, I encourage you to go through the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, and they will definitely support you in this process. Another great resource, oh gosh, I can't think of, it's called Include NYC. Include NYC. It's if you have any challenges, I implore you to really, really go through Include NYC. They do everything from evaluations, even to help your child get an IEP later on in life. So Include NYC is another great resource.
I think, if I may. Thank you. Ms. Jones, thank you for being on with us. Great information that you're offering. I can totally vouch for everything you're saying as a father to 4 children, one of them being diagnosed with autism. And I can definitely say I've walked the walk that you're describing, and I had to learn to talk the talk that you're sharing. So I think tonight's going to be fantastic. My question to you is this: as one of the parents that was in denial initially, when it came to accepting and embracing the gift of the unique perspective that my son has, it became somewhat of a challenge at first, only because I and his mother were in denial. And then when we got on board, things for him started to improve. So I can understand. How do you go about rounding up parents and convincing them? What's that process like when it comes to recruiting, for lack of a better term, parents to come out to your events? What's that like?
Well, the recruitment process, I've really been doing a lot of digital. And also when I see people in the store, like Down syndrome is a physical, you really notice, right? So I really go up to parents, and some parents are a little standoffish. And sometimes I pull Elijah in like, hey, it's okay. And then they break down some of the barriers. But I would say for those parents that may be, in denial, if you will, find a place to fellowship and network with like-minded parents, because it helps. Because your child may be having behavioral challenges, but again, you have to go out and you have to break that barrier, because the more closed you are, the more you're preventing your child from living an all-inclusive life.
Yes.
Right. So you have to open up your mind, if not for yourself, but definitely for your child, because one of the things that I want to happen is that when I'm gone, right, Elijah has the ability to have some type of sustaining for himself, So we're not going to be around forever. So we have to get them as much help as possible and help them to become as independent as possible according to, their abilities.
Absolutely.
We had a question. We
Okay,
had a question from one of the listeners. What challenges did you encounter working to get your child diagnosed?
Oh, well, I encountered a lot of challenges. People would tell you no, and I would just have to question, why. I would really just have to be a staunch mama bear. And no, I know what I'm entitled to, and I'm not going away until I receive these services. So it really, prepared me to be an advocate for other people just by standing my ground and saying, no, my son is entitled to these services and I have to, receive them. And, not everyone can do that. But again, I encourage you to read, educate yourself, network. You have to, because this work cannot be done in silo, right? Even with your family members, you have to build a support system and a network. And that's what I would have to say. Just keep going. When they tell you no, you find another door to go through.
And I know, I just wanted to ask, I know sometimes there's a lot of challenges, but particularly in the Black and Brown community, what do you think of some of the challenges that they may have in addition to being in denial?
Well, before she answers that, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, Ms. Jones, we'll have you to answer that question. We'll be right back.
No problem.
It's Shannon. It's Shannon.
Man, it's lonely. Like, going through life lonely.
There is the therapeutic aspect of music, just expressing how you feel. I'm going to talk to Howie about his feelings, make it into a song.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We are talking about children with special needs with our special guest, Ms. Deon Jones. Before we went to break, he was getting ready to respond to Dr. Vanessa's question.
Okay, and can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Oh,
I'm here setting up at the church for UMCA, and I just had a long day of work. So,
all right, sure. You know, sometimes there's a lot of services out there, and there's a lot of services out there that people don't know about. So, how do you find, particularly in the Black and Brown community, when they're dealing with circumstances that's out of the norm, in addition to being in denial?
Well, I would say the denial piece, again, I'm a little on the fence with the denial, but
let me just clarify that when I say denial, because you may not have the knowledge, not necessarily equates to you being in denial, but then sometimes when they are actually told, like when they're going to the doctors, they're being told there's something different, something special, something that requires further testing, and they still negating the fact that nothing's wrong with the child. You know, I know sometimes in the community, particularly Black and Brown community, there's a lot of stigmas and things that are not really readily acceptable. So how do we really get around that so we're able to get the children the required help that they need?
Accessibility, right? Programs like UMCA, fellowshipping, networking, bringing your children out, even having your children go to church, even having your, social settings on Saturdays. It's very important that, again, you get out there, let the community know who your child is, take them to the neighbor's house, anything can happen and so that they can look out for your child. That's what I would say is it's a matter of accessibility. We need more programs, not just UMCA, that caters to special needs children and their families. It's an underserved community, right? It's a lot of space here in Brooklyn. There should be more companies like UMCA to help parents and children. So that's what I would say. I would say we just have to have more accessible programs. And when I say accessible, and free. Right. Some programs, they start off free, but keep it at that. So that way parents, they don't have that barriers. Oh, I can't pay, or I don't feel like going through the insurance. And, you miss out on really helping to cultivate families by putting a price on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You mentioned something very, I'm sorry, Lottie. You mentioned something very unique in terms of when we're no longer here. Because see, it's not a issue of, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, right? So how do we prepare our kids and those, and especially these kids in these circumstances? Do you advocate at your program for families to at least build a trust? Because there are special needs trusts. And sometimes many kids may have services, monetary services from the government, or services because of the disability, which will not interfere and can be protected with a special needs trust.
And that's why I have professionals in the field coming not only about special needs trust, which is very important, because once your child turns 18, right, you have to apply for guardianship. So that's another process. And in addition to that, you can't just leave your child property without putting it in a special needs trust. So all those things are very important. And that's why I have attorneys coming in to speak about special needs trusts and about guardianship, because it's very important, because when your child turns 18, you don't want them to become a ward of the state automatically. So it's a process and paperwork that you have to start before they even get 18. In fact, someone pulled my coattail and told me that I need to start the guardianship process now, and Elijah is 16. So, we really, again, have to worry about, not even worry about, just make sure that we try to set up for our children as much as possible, and especially making them as independent as possible, based upon their abilities, just like any child. Even if your child didn't have special needs, every parent wants their child to be able to sustain themselves and to take care of themselves. So even more so with a child with special needs, especially those who may be nonverbal and, are medically fragile, they want them to be able to, live a healthy life even when we're gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I just want to backtrack before Dr. Vanessa asked her question. When we were talking about parents being in denial, even though, I know you said that you don't think parents are in denial, but I have that point I have to disagree from my experience, because I have a cousin and a niece that was in denial and did not get the resources and stuff that they needed for the children until the family had to intervene and start helping the kids get the help and resources they needed, because it was like you telling them they see something is wrong, but it's like, no, well, the doctor said they'll grow out of, they're not speaking. And so you were 2 years old. So by the time you get 3, you're still not speaking. And you were talking about what the doctor said, because a child is eventually going to start speaking or whatever. So you were partly in denial, but then you're not stepping up, like you said before, to take control of the situation, for your child and stuff like that. Especially if you really see it physically. You see it physically that something is wrong. And so then we had to step in and actually get the help for the children at that time when they needed it, when it should have been started when they was young, from the time they was a year old or 2 years old or something like that, because like I said, there is a stigma. There is a stigma, and that's how they look at it. That they don't want people to think there's something wrong with their children, rather than looking at it that, okay, there is a problem here, and we're going to get the help that the child needs and the resources that the child needs. Because if you get it at the early stages, then most likely sometime the child can develop and really go on to kind of help take care of themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I and for those parents who, may be a little uncertain about the process, God works in mysterious ways. Thank God that you guys were able to corral and convene and get the children the support that they needed, and he may not come when you want him to, but he's right on time. I'm sure the children benefited from the resources, and that's what we have to continue to do, just remain steadfast in our faith when we have children with disabilities and we have family members with disabilities who may, have a fear of these uncharted waters.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Really good. You had a question down there. Did you work with his?
Sorry, did you work with his pediatrician on diagnosis? So I'll tell you about his diagnosis. So when I had him, he actually went to the well baby nursery. And it was not until they started to feed him that they noticed that he would not latch on to the bottle. So they came to me and they told me to come into the NICU. And I came and I went into the NICU. And they said that your child may have Down syndrome. And I just, dropped, right? And they didn't want to tell me. Of course they knew because they saw the characteristic, the slanted eyes, but they could not tell me until the karyotype test came back, and it came back that he had Down syndrome, or trisomy 21, which is the medical term for Down syndrome. And what happens is we have chromosomes, and we get those that have Down syndrome, they get an extra chromosome. You get two chromosomes attached, right? With trisomy 21 Down syndrome, there's a third chromosome on your 21st chromosome. So that's why they call it trisomy 21, 321.
Right.
And so they had to wait for all this testing to come back. And, he was in the NICU for 11 days. And, as I'm there in the hospital going back and forth to the NICU, I accepted the diagnosis. I leaned into my faith. I leaned into my family, and I did what I had to do. It was so much so that I started to, breastfeed, and I would come back and bring the milk because he was still in the hospital. And a nurse came and pulled me to the side and said, "Listen, you running and you running. You see your legs, they ashy. You keep yourself up." Right. So and I appreciated that. Right. That's that village. And I looked down. Sure enough, I was ashy. So, as I'm running, I got my mojo back. I just finished having a baby, 22 years old. I'm trying to, make it work. So it's those moments that, with his diagnosis that really pulled me through. And I just been doing what I had to do ever since.
So, Ms. Jones, would you encourage parents, right? Now you're older now, so you got more experience, you've been through it and everything like that. But, I always said, I think when something is wrong, particularly in when it comes to the special needs children, that, parents should also get training in how to deal with the child. And to also get that parent training in how to deal with the children with special needs, particularly if you have a child like that, to actually learn how to work with that child, how to deal with them, how to, talk to them and all like that. I just see that as a benefit to the parent. What do you feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. I still get training myself. In fact, my background, I'm a special education teacher by license for the New York City Department of Education. And then I became an assistant principal and supervising special education. Now I work for the district office, working in math. And I say all that to say with all of this education, right? And working in the field of education, I still get trained. Right. And even when I see, occupational therapists in my professional setting, I may ask them questions because these questions, they could service the community that I serve. So it's just a matter of continuously keeping yourself educated, trained, like you said, and, going through and learning and toiling with your child. Because UMCA was born because I was at a loss. Like, Elijah started with these adverse behaviors and he's doing phenomenal, phenomenal. I wish I was home so you guys can see him, but I'm setting up for him, his friends. But I'm just so grateful to God. Like like I said, he just got potty trained at 14 years old. But guess what? The productive struggle and the progress I'm okay with, and I'm still learning with him. That's why I have the occupational therapists coming in and working with the families so that they can learn, what types of, because with sensory processing disorder, there's no cure for it, but you can use a sensory diet where you have children, touching certain textures. You're giving them deep pressure hugs, weighted vests, certain, tools for the mouth to help with their oral motor. So it's various, techniques that you can help them with to stop having these adverse reactions to the environment. But again, you have to keep yourself immersed, and it's not easy, right? But again, if you want the best for your child when you're long and gone, this is the investment that you have to make up front.
I just
you
want to say
very quick because I want to
very quickly. I think it's important. Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for everything you said. I think it's important.
I'm not a doctor, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Well, yeah. Hey, maybe I'm a prophet, right? Maybe I'm a prophet. Because very quickly, I think what we're doing is we're exposing the cookie cutter approach in education that we put on all children. Where even I have 4 children, 2 have IEPs and 2 don't. But if you don't monitor them, they'll be thrown into the same system, and maybe 1 out of the 4 will come out successful, when all 4 should have a chance to come out successful, just like your child. So thank you.
I just wanted them, Ms. Jones, to know, because we're going to have to go in a minute, that they can come out every second Saturday at Bethany Baptist Church for your creative art program that you're going to be working with the special needs kids with their parents. And this is something good for the kids to come out on that Saturday to experience.
Absolutely. I have a special educator who works with the children, engaging in creative arts. And it's not that they have to do one activities. I have sensory stations set up for children based on the arts, a music station, a drama station, an art station. So they can just come out and have a good time. And right next door in the room, we have our parents who will stay for a family chat led by an expert in the field. And in November, I actually have Dr. B, who is an owner of a sensory gym on Bedford Avenue. And I will implore you to even have her on your show, because she is an actual doctor, an occupational therapist, and she can really, really delve into, the occupational side of it. And,
Well, we will get that information from you later for her, but I want to, at this time, thank you for coming on and sharing this information and for setting up a program that parents have somewhere to come, to get more information and to be able to work with their kids. And maybe, you'll come on again, later and tell us a little more about what parents need to be doing, working with their kids and stuff like that. So thank you for creating this program so they'll have somewhere to go on the second Saturday. So remember, it's at Bethany Baptist Church. That's on Marcy Avenue. I think it's at the corner of Decatur.
No, it's
not Marcy Avenue. I'm sorry, Marcus Garvey.
It's 460 Marcus Garvey Boulevard.
Marcus Garvey at the corner of Decatur. So thank you again. And hopefully you will have a good success at your event on Saturday. And like I said, you can always come again. So thank you again for joining us. And thank everybody for joining us today. And hope you got a lot of
thank you guys for having me. I truly appreciate it. And Mr. Sandler, please bring your children on Saturday, all of them. All 4. All right.
That sounds good.
I not know anybody. And it's an inclusive program too, right? Because you have 2 children that have IEPs and 2 don't. And I also want children that don't have special needs to learn how to, interact and socialize with children with special needs. Because that's important to have, inclusivity with their peers.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, we got to go. Our time is up. So thank you again. Thank you again.
Right.
So, as always, we'll see you next time.
Yes.
Today's show is sponsored by Abu's Bakery. If you have a sweet tooth, stop by Abu's Bakery for some delicious cakes and pies.
Would you like beautiful pictures for your home or your office? Then stop by Faith Art Gallery. They have a large selection of pictures from around the world.
It's Shannon.